My mother-in-law locked me in a bathroom while I was in labor at my sister-in-law's wedding. She took my phone and left me for over an hour to not ruin the ceremony. But when I almost died with my baby and police found her, she lost her granddaughter forever and now has a restraining order. I'm 29 years old. My name is Kimberly. I work in digital marketing, and I need to tell this story because what happened to me 3 months ago literally almost killed me and my baby, and all because of my mother-in-law, Dorothy. I know that sounds dramatic, but when I say she almost killed me, I'm not exaggerating even a little bit. This woman locked me in a bathroom while I was in labor, took my phone, and left me there for over an hour because she didn't want to ruin my sister-in-law Vanessa's wedding. Yes, you read that right. She chose to risk my life and her own granddaughter's life rather than interrupt a wedding ceremony. And the thing is, all of this could have been avoided if someone had paid attention to the signs Dorothy had been showing throughout my entire pregnancy. But well, I guess nobody wants to believe their mother is capable of something like that until she actually does it. Let me back up a bit to give you some context. My husband, Gregory, or Greg, as I call him, is 30 years old and is basically the most calm and reasonable person I know. We've been married for almost 4 years, and we've always had a super stable relationship, one of those boring ones, but in a good way. His family seemed normal too, or at least that's what I thought. There's his younger sister, Vanessa, who's 28 and is the sweetest person, and his sister, Nicole, who's 24 and is kind of dramatic but generally cool. Greg's father died when he was like 19, a sudden heart attack, and since then, Dorothy became, let's say, very protective of her children. I didn't see it as a bad thing at first. The woman lost her husband young and was left alone raising 3 kids. It's understandable that she'd be a bit intense, right? Things started getting weird when I got pregnant. It was in February of last year. We weren't actively trying to have kids, but we weren't being careful either. And when I found out I was about 5 weeks along, Greg was super excited. Me too, obviously. And we decided to wait until 12 weeks to tell everyone. But before that, like at 8 weeks or so, Vanessa called us super excited because Tyler, her longtime boyfriend, had finally proposed. They'd been dating since college, like 6 years together, and she was planning this huge wedding for October. She asked me to be one of her bridesmaids along with Nicole and 2 of her friends from college, and I obviously said yes because I adore her. The problem came when we hit 12 weeks and told everyone about the pregnancy. We had a family dinner at Dorothy's house, bought a cake that said baby on the way, and the whole thing. Vanessa screamed with excitement. Nicole too. Even Tyler, who was there, congratulated us super happily. But Dorothy just kind of froze. Literally. She sat there with her fork in her hand, staring at the cake without saying anything for what felt like forever but was probably only 30 seconds. Then she said something like, "Oh, what a surprise," in a super flat voice, and forced a smile. Greg noticed it too, but we didn't say anything in the moment. Everyone reacts differently to news. You know what I mean? That same night, I had to talk to Vanessa because, doing the math, my due date was going to be late October, basically 2 weeks after her wedding. I explained to her that obviously I wanted to be at her wedding, but that maybe it wasn't a good idea to be a bridesmaid, being that pregnant, like 38 weeks, because what if I went into labor in the middle of the ceremony? Or something. I felt horrible telling her, but I thought it was the most responsible thing. And this is where Vanessa proved she's literally an angel, because she laughed and told me not to worry at all, that she understood perfectly, and that what was important was that I be there as a guest if I felt okay. She asked if I wanted to keep participating in the bachelorette party that was going to be in June and in the dress fittings and all that. And when I said yes, she said perfect. That Nicole could be the maid of honor then, and everything was settled. Zero drama, zero resentment, pure understanding. But Dorothy went crazy when she found out. Greg told me later that his mom called him the day after I talked to Vanessa and basically yelled at him on the phone about how I dared to ruin her daughter's special day. That it was obvious I had gotten pregnant on purpose, to steal the spotlight from Vanessa, and that in her day pregnant women knew how to keep in their place and not make everything about them. Greg was shocked. His mom had never talked about me like that. And he told her she was being completely irrational, that Vanessa was perfectly fine with everything and that Dorothy needed to calm down. She hung up on him and didn't talk to him for a whole week. I thought it was weird, but I also thought maybe she was stressed about Vanessa's wedding and it would pass. Sometimes people react badly under pressure. But it didn't pass. In fact, it got worse. As my pregnancy progressed, Dorothy became more and more hostile toward me. When we went to family gatherings, she would completely ignore me. Like, she'd talk to Greg and Vanessa and Nicole but wouldn't even look at me. If I said something, she'd act like I hadn't spoken. Once, I think it was in May, we were at a baby shower. My mom organized for me, and Dorothy showed up because Greg invited her, thinking maybe that would help her feel more included. The woman showed up with a super small gift, like a $15 thing from Target, while everyone else had brought things from the registry or substantial gifts. Not that I cared about the money, you know what I mean? But it was obvious she did it to make a statement. And then she spent the whole party sitting in a corner looking bitter, and when someone asked her if she was excited about her first grandchild, she'd say things like, "Well, we'll see how everything turns out." Or, "I suppose so." My mom later asked me what was up with my Lixus mother-in-law, and I didn't even know what to tell her. Greg tried to talk to her several times. He asked her directly what problem she had with me or with the pregnancy, but Dorothy always denied everything. She'd say she didn't have any problem, that she was happy for us, that Greg was imagining things, but her actions said otherwise. Like in July, Greg sent her photos from the 20-week ultrasound where you could see the baby super clearly. We were having a girl, Lucy, although we didn't know until like 16 weeks. And Dorothy didn't even respond to the message. Not a, "How beautiful," or an emoji or anything. Greg was devastated because, that's his mom, the woman who raised him, and suddenly she was acting like her first grandchild didn't exist. Vanessa and Nicole, on the other hand, were amazing through all this. Vanessa included me in everything about the wedding, sent me photos of the decorations, and asked my opinion about everything, even though I was no longer a bridesmaid. Nicole offered to organize a second, smaller baby shower with me, just with Greg's sisters, because she said she wanted to celebrate her niece properly. Both of them confronted Dorothy about her behavior several times, but she always denied it or changed the subject. Vanessa told me she'd noticed her mom had been weird since her dad died, like more controlling and possessive with her kids, but that she'd never been directly cruel to anyone, so she didn't know what to do. October came and I was huge, like, so pregnant that it was hard for me to walk and breathe at the same time. Vanessa's wedding was on October 12th, and my due date was the 28th. So, technically, I had 2.5 weeks of margin. My doctor told me it was safe to go to the wedding as long as I didn't feel bad, and had my phone nearby, just in case. Greg wanted me to stay home, but I told him I wasn't going to miss Vanessa's wedding for anything in the world, that I'd be fine. Besides, the venue was only 20 minutes from the hospital, so worst case scenario, we'd leave quickly and that's it. Vanessa had put us at a table super close to the exit, so I could leave easily if I needed to rest or whatever. The wedding day dawned super beautiful. It was a perfect fall Saturday with ideal weather. The ceremony was at 4 inches the afternoon at a gorgeous venue, rustic barn style but elegant, the kind that are trendy now. We arrived around 3:30. Greg was wearing his groomsman suit because Tyler had chosen him as his best man, and I was wearing a dark green maternity dress that made me feel like a whale, but well, what was I going to do? Dorothy was already there, obviously, because she was the best man's mother, and when she saw us arrive, she shot me a look that literally gave me chills. But she didn't say anything. She just turned around and went to talk to I don't know who. The ceremony was going to start in about half an hour, and I needed to go to the bathroom because, surprise, when you're 38 weeks pregnant, you need to pee every 15 minutes. I told Greg I was going to the bathroom and would be right back. He was busy helping Tyler with I don't know what thing about the rings or the boutonnieres, so he said okay, to hurry because the ceremony was about to start. The bathroom was on the second floor of the venue. I climbed the stairs with difficulty, holding onto the railing because I could barely see my own feet anymore, and went into the bathroom, which thank God was empty. And that's where everything went to hell. I was in the bathroom, doing my thing, when I felt something weird, like an internal pop and then some liquid. At first I thought I'd peed myself because that also happens when you're super pregnant. But then I realized I couldn't stop the liquid and I had no control over it. And that's when I panicked because I realized my water had broken. I literally thought, this can't be. Not here. Not now. There are 2.5 weeks until my due date. This can't be. It's happening. But it was definitely happening because the liquid kept coming. And I was starting to feel some pressure in my lower back. I cleaned myself up as best I could, pulled up my underwear, pulled down my dress, and came out of the bathroom stall to wash my hands and try to think about what to do. I needed to call Greg immediately, get my phone and tell him we had to go to the hospital now. But when I opened the stall door, there was Dorothy, standing in the middle of the bathroom, looking at me with an expression I can't even describe. Like, a mix of satisfaction and anger and something else that gave me goosebumps. I told her, "Dorothy, my water broke. I need to find Greg. We have to go to the hospital." And she just looked at me and said, "No, you're not going to ruin Vanessa's day." I thought I'd heard wrong. Like, she can't be telling me what I think she's telling me. So I repeated, "You don't understand. I'm in labor. The baby's coming. I need to go to the hospital now." And she took a step toward me and said, perfectly calmly, "You're going to wait until the ceremony is over. It's only 30 minutes. You can handle 30 minutes. I'm not going to allow you to steal this moment from my daughter." I tried to get past her to reach the door, but she blocked my way. I took my phone out of my bag to call Greg, but Dorothy snatched it from my hands before I could unlock it. I told her, or rather yelled at her, to give me back my phone, that she was crazy, that she couldn't do this. But she backed up toward the bathroom door with my phone in her hand, went out, and I literally heard her lock the door from the outside. She had locked me in. The woman had locked me in the second-floor bathroom while I was in labor. I started yelling at her to let me out, to open the door, that this was insane. I was pounding on the door with my fists while the contractions started to intensify. I could hear her on the other side telling me to shut up, to wait just half an hour, that after the ceremony she would tell Greg herself and everything would be fine. I yelled that she was putting me in danger, that she was putting her granddaughter in danger. How could she do this to her own granddaughter? And she said something that still gives me goosebumps when I remember it. She said, "That girl has already ruined enough. She's not going to ruin this too." I heard her walk away, probably going down the stairs to go back to the ceremony, and I stood there in front of the locked door trying to process what had just happened. The contractions were getting stronger, coming every 10 minutes or so, and I knew that with my first baby, labor could last hours but could also be fast. There was no way to know. I tried to force the door, but it was one of those old solid wood doors, and the lock was one of those old metal ones that bolts from the outside. There was no way to open it from inside. I started screaming for help. I screamed as loud as I could. "Help. Someone help me. I'm in labor." But the bathroom was on the second floor in the back part of the venue, and the ceremony was starting downstairs on the other side of the building, probably with music and everyone talking. Nobody could hear me. I kept screaming until my throat hurt, until I basically lost my voice, but nobody came. I could hear the ceremony music downstairs, very faint, and I just kept thinking about Greg down there, not knowing where I was, probably worrying that I hadn't come back, but assuming maybe I'd felt sick and had gone outside for air or something. The contractions kept intensifying. I completely lost track of time, but I think like an hour passed, maybe more. I tried to stay calm, to breathe like they'd taught me in the birthing classes, but it was impossible to stay calm in that situation. I was terrified, not just for me, but for Lucy. What if something went wrong? What if there were complications and there was nobody to help me? What if she was born right there on the bathroom floor and I didn't know what to do? I sat on the floor because I couldn't stand anymore. My back was killing me and the contractions were so strong they made me shake. At some point, I don't know exactly when, I think I passed out. The pain was too much. I'd screamed so much I could barely breathe. And everything just went black. The last thing I remember is being leaning against the bathroom wall, feeling another contraction coming and thinking, this can't be happening, this can't be real, and then nothing. The next thing I knew, I was in an ambulance. Greg was there, holding my hand, crying, telling me everything was going to be okay, that we were almost at the hospital. I tried to talk, but my throat was destroyed from screaming so much. I only managed to make a croaking sound. A paramedic was checking my blood pressure and connecting me to a monitor to listen to Lucy's heartbeat. I found out later what had happened. The ceremony had ended, everyone was moving to the reception, and Greg still couldn't find me. He'd been looking for me everywhere, asking everyone if they'd seen me, and nobody knew anything. He was starting to panic when Dorothy approached him, and according to Greg, she was super nervous and weird, and told him she thought I was in the second-floor bathroom, but she wasn't sure. Greg ran up the stairs, found the bathroom locked from the outside, forced it, literally broke the lock with a kick, and found me unconscious on the floor. He carried me, went down the stairs yelling for someone to call an ambulance, and everything was chaos after that. Tyler helped call 911. Vanessa and Nicole ran up to help, and Dorothy, well, Dorothy just stood there watching everything without saying anything until Greg confronted her. He asked her what she knew, why she'd told him I was in that bathroom, and she broke down and confessed everything. She told him she'd found me when my water broke, that she'd taken my phone and locked me in the bathroom because she didn't want me to ruin the ceremony, that she'd planned to let me out afterward but time had gotten away from her and she'd gotten scared. Greg told me all this later at the hospital. He said he literally told his mom she was dead to him, that he was never going to forgive her for putting my life and Lucy's in danger, that he was going to press criminal charges against her, and that if Lucy or I had any health problems because of her, he would make sure she went to prison. Dorothy tried to say she was sorry, that it hadn't been her intention, but Greg didn't want to hear anything. Nicole had to hold him back because he was so furious it looked like he was going to do something he'd regret. At the hospital, they checked me completely. Lucy was fine. Thank God. Her heart rate was strong and normal, but I was dehydrated. My blood pressure was dangerously high from the stress, and my throat was so damaged from screaming that the doctor said it was like I'd been screaming for hours nonstop, that I'd probably have to do vocal therapy afterward. They induced labor because I was already too far along, and the contractions weren't going to stop. Lucy was born 6 hours later, at 2 inches the morning on Sunday, perfectly healthy, weighing 7 pounds. When I held her for the first time, I couldn't stop crying. I cried so much the doctors got worried. But it wasn't because I was sad. It was because I was so relieved she was okay, that we were both okay despite everything. The incredible thing was that around 11 inches the morning on Sunday, when I was more stable and able to have visitors, Vanessa, Tyler, and Nicole came to the hospital still in their wedding clothes. Vanessa was still in her wedding dress, Tyler in his suit, Nicole in her maid of honor dress. They brought flowers and balloons and a basket full of baby stuff. Vanessa hugged me so carefully, like I was going to break, and apologized 1,000 times for what her mom had done. I told her she didn't have to apologize, that it wasn't her fault. But she kept saying she felt horrible, that her wedding day had ended up being a nightmare for me. I told her what was important was that Lucy was okay and that she'd had her beautiful ceremony, and when she held Lucy for the first time, Vanessa was crying with happiness and saying she was the most perfect baby in the world. Tyler took photos of all of us with Lucy, including several of Vanessa holding her in her wedding dress, and said those were going to be his favorite wedding photos because now his special day also included the birth of his niece. Greg was there too, of course, and when I saw his whole family gathered around Lucy, showing her so much love, minus Dorothy obviously, I realized that despite everything horrible that had happened, we had a family that completely supported us. Greg told everyone what Dorothy had done, the complete details, and Vanessa, Nicole, and Tyler were in absolute shock. Nicole said she'd always known her mom was a bit controlling, but never imagined she was capable of something like that. I told Greg I didn't want to press charges. I know it sounds crazy after everything that happened, but I was so exhausted, physically and emotionally, that I couldn't deal with the idea of a legal process on top of everything else. He was furious with me about it. Said Dorothy needed to face real consequences for what she did. But eventually I convinced him that for now we should just focus on Lucy and our new life as a family. What we did make clear was that Dorothy wasn't going to be around Lucy, ever. Never, ever, was she going to have access to our daughter after what she did. But Dorothy didn't accept it. Monday night, around 1 inch the morning, she showed up at our house banging on the door and screaming that she wanted to see her granddaughter, that she had a right to see her, that we were ungrateful. The neighbors called the police because she was making so much noise. When the patrol arrived, Dorothy told them we were unjustly denying her access to her granddaughter, but Greg explained the whole bathroom and wedding situation, and the police told her to leave or they'd arrest her for disturbing the peace. She left but kept sending messages, calls, emails, everything. The messages were disturbing. She said things like, Lucy had ruined her family, that I had brainwashed Greg into hating her, that the baby shouldn't have even been born, because I was obviously a bad mother, who put my need for attention above my daughter. Nicole showed us some messages Dorothy had sent her too, where she said she was jealous of Lucy, that she didn't want the baby to take attention away from her children, that since I got pregnant, she felt like she was losing Greg. It was sick. Literally, reading those messages was like reading the thoughts of someone who seriously needs psychiatric help. Nicole, who studied psychology in college, told Greg they needed to have someone professionally evaluate Dorothy because her behavior wasn't normal. Vanessa arranged for Dorothy to be evaluated by a psychiatrist. She basically had to manipulate her by telling her it was therapy to help her deal with the stress of everything that had happened. The results were weird. They didn't find any major psychiatric illness, no diagnosable personality disorder, just generalized anxiety. The doctor said Dorothy had issues with control and with letting go of her children that had probably intensified after her husband's death, but that technically she didn't meet the criteria for any diagnosis that would completely explain her behavior. In other words, she basically knew what she was doing, chose to do it, and didn't have the excuse of being mentally ill that somehow made it worse. You know what I mean? Because it meant she was aware and just didn't care. With a lawyer's help, we got a restraining order against Dorothy, specifically related to Lucy. She couldn't come near us, couldn't contact us, and definitely couldn't be around the baby. Greg was devastated about having to get to that point with his own mother, but said Lucy's safety was the most important thing, and that Dorothy had proven she couldn't be trusted. Vanessa, Nicole, and Tyler completely supported us in the decision. In fact, Nicole told her mom directly that she was also cutting contact with her until Dorothy accepted real responsibility for what she did and sought serious help, not just a one-time evaluation. Now Lucy is 3 months old. She's perfect, healthy, and every day when I hold her, I think about how close we came to losing her, or to me losing my life, because of a woman who supposedly loved us. Dorothy has tried to contact us a few more times through unknown numbers or new emails, but we block her every time. Our lawyer has everything documented in case we need to strengthen the restraining order in the future. Greg still has moments where he gets super sad about his mom, because despite everything that happened, she raised him and he has good memories from his childhood. But he says the Dorothy he knew died the day she locked me in that bathroom. Vanessa and Nicole come visit us every week. They fight over who gets to hold Lucy more, and they say she's the best thing that's happened to their family in a long time. Sometimes I still have nightmares about being locked in that bathroom, about the contractions and the panic and the feeling of being completely alone. My therapist says I probably have some PTSD from all the birth trauma, and that it's going to take time to process everything. Greg feels guilty for not looking for me faster, even though I tell him 1,000 times it's not his fault, that he had no way of knowing what his mother was capable of doing. Last week, Lucy woke up crying in the middle of the night, and when I went to pick her up, Greg was already there, holding her and telling her he was never going to let anyone hurt her, that he was always going to protect her. And I guess that's what keeps me sane, knowing that no matter how horrible all that was, in the end, I have this perfect baby and a husband who would do anything to protect us. Dorothy lost the chance to know her granddaughter, to be part of her life, and that's a consequence she's going to have to live with for the rest of her life. I just hope Lucy never has to know this whole story, or at least not until she's old enough to understand how complicated family can be sometimes.